I love your hair.
Oh, thank you. It's an experiment, a
You look
spontaneous one.
so different in the other interviews I've seen, just being straight. It looks great.
Oh, wait, well, one sec. I have a problem. Thank you so much. I have a problem with, I see myself, but I don't really see. Now I see you. Thank you.
That's all that matters. As long as you can see me, that's all that matters.
So, we get
Thank
rid.
you for your time.
Thank you too for
I
inviting
had
me.
so Venny, my co-host,
Mhm.
interviewed you for the Folterkammer album.
Yes, exactly. Hmm.
I can't remember where I was, but I couldn't join, so I was a bit gutted. But I listened to it and I loved it, and
Thank you.
I loved the record. And the thing that got me about the interview was the amount of times black metal was mentioned in it. And I'm a huge black metal fan, so I
I
thought,
see.
I thought, do you know what? Let's have a chat about black metal.
Oh,
I'm just back from Oslo as well, actually, this weekend.
oh
So I did
wow.
a bit of record shopping. I went to Helvete, the shop with black metal in it. Yeah, all that. Took my kids there. They loved it.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I just wanted to talk about because now obviously the first time I heard you, Andromeda, was on Vile Luxury, Imperial Triumphant's
Oh, yes, of course. Mhm.
album, and they're in the black metal realm, that avant-garde. But I mean, your vocals on that are incredibly haunting slash disturbing, like mesmerizing at the same time. And I fell in love with it. So naturally, I had to listen to your album, Folterkammer, the new one. But in terms of black metal, for yourself, when did you get into black metal?
I think it started in my early 20s, actually.
Okay.
I was growing up listening to all kinds of music. Actually, my parents supported that a lot. They were into everything, and my sisters and I grew up like this too. And I had phases. Like it started with progressive rock music when I was in kindergarten. That was, I don't know why. And I like those epic kind of things. I was also listening to classical music as a kid, but also, soul, R&B and stuff. During that time when you were watching MTV in the 80s, right, there was a lot of rock and metal music, and later on it was more like hip hop, R&B. So I went through everything, discovered everything, and all of a sudden, I think in my late teens, I or like discovered rock music and heavy metal and all of that for myself again, like
Mhm.
more consciously. And black metal kind of hit me when I was in my late teenage years or early 20s. I don't know why, but it intrigued me because there was a lot of rawness to it. And as you hear, I'm a classically trained musician. That
Yeah.
didn't just start with singing. I started with classical guitar playing when I was 5 years old, but I then switched to piano and even church organ when I was a kid. I had a great teacher back then who played the both, and she taught me both. So that's a more kind of very strict, rigid kind of musical training, and something like punk music or black metal was the exact opposite of that. It was extremely expressive. It was really, out of your stomach, like direct, nothing tamed, nothing controlled. And I was, even at the conservatory, I was kind of a black sheep or black metal sheep, maybe. I was listening to thrash metal a lot. And I think the jump from early 80s, mid 80s thrash metal to black metal is a small one. It's like
Yeah, yeah.
I loved Slayer. So Slayer, and it was kind of, I guess it was kind of an influence to what happened with black metal. And I just love that incredible raw expression. That's what I loved about it. I love all kinds of metal, don't get me wrong. There is interesting music everywhere, and I'm really into music in general, not just into one style specifically. But I loved black metal and also punk music because of this opposite of what I normally listened to and what I was trained, as a musician. And also those, what is normally associated with black metal, those high shrieky vocal
Yeah.
sounds, not cultivated at all. I was like, my God, I have a very high voice by name. I'm a Colorado. So I'm right there, right? But I was intrigued by the screams being so high. So it comes very natural to me, even if I do very, low sounding screams, it will still sound high when my voice does. It's kind of frustrating at times. So black metal is very close. I think it's a natural. And what I love about black metal always was that even it's to me, it was always a very inclusive kind of music, because even if you don't have a lot of technical chops on your instruments, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can still create something if you are a very creative person with good ears. And that intrigued me, to have an inclusive kind of music style that allows many people to meet. You can have and I can look at Folterkammer. We have a lot of we have very different backgrounds, all of us. From classically trained musicians to trained composers to people who don't have no training, like Brandon. He's not a trained musician. He's actually a trained actor. Our drummer, he's very raw on drums, but it's the contrast that makes, to me, Folterkammer so interesting. And I think black metal, when you look at metal in general, black metal specifically is a one genre that allows all these kind of people to meet and to exchange musically without, oh, you're not precise enough, oh, you don't know how to do that, or whatever. It's not so important. There is another aspect. And I think that's the beauty of black metal. That's my own opinion, that it's inclusive. Many people can join in and create black metal, no matter what is their background. And I think that's the most precious thing about that style. In death metal, it's more groove oriented. So you need chops with precision when it comes to rhythm, and you need to understand even more complex rhythm. In black metal, that's not so much. It's not really necessary. If you can do it, great. If not, great. You know what I mean? It's like there is something else. It's another expression that is needed for black metal. And personally, I think that's one of the most beautiful things in music, when all kinds of musicians can meet and create something. Yeah.
And when you say raw, you're talking about the fact of being inclusive, and like, you don't need to have a degree in music like someone in Dream Theater, that to make these different polyrhythms and stuff like that. But also, I think the production as well, especially in the early black metal days, if you look at A Blaze in Northern Sky by Darkthrone, that style of production really drew me to it for some reason, that it wasn't this polished, output. And were you looking for something a bit more extreme? Like you said, you listen to Slayer, I listen to Slayer, Iron Maiden, Megadeth, etc. And I was like, just looking for something a little bit heavier, perhaps. Is that the way you were looking at it?
I always loved intensity in music, whatever that means. If it's with complexity, if it's with loud volume, if it's with something like blast beats, if it's something that is just whatever it is that makes it intense, that's what I'm looking for, because I'm easily bored by nature, by everything. When I always have to sing nicely or beautifully, it's not interesting for me in the long run. I after 5 minutes, I'm bored and I want to do something else. You know what I mean? And that's why I love to create all kinds of music, because tomorrow I'm not in the same mood like yesterday or now. And the music is there is so much. There's an infinite. There are infinite ways of how to create music, and every style in music is like a language on its own. And it's interesting for me to learn all these languages and then learn how to play with that, learning the rules, learning how to break them, and I think that black metal to me is one way of how to break a lot of these rules, and also to live a lot of what I seek in music, the intensity, also the intensity of uncontrolled expression. You know what I mean? That, it's you don't need therapy anymore when you do that. I just love it. And you know, those lyrics, you can, I love to write my own lyrics. When I was singing jazz music, or and you know those jazz standards, and you can write your own lyrics there too. But when you are into when you're getting educated at the conservatory, you always have those lyrics that are already written with the compositions or with the standards. And I was like, oh, who sings that stuff? As a singer, I have to deal with the lyrics. And I wanted to, there are days when I feel okay with that kind of, with those kind of songs, and I enjoyed it. But in other days I want to sing about blood and about
Yeah.
destroying everything. And black metal is a mood, like, or a language I love to use on a more regular basis, because it's so open. Black metal is a very creative kind of metal. I think it also has to do with the fact that there are so many possibilities when, far away from just rigid chops or technical things. So you have to be creative in another way to be convincing that people start listening to you. And you can do that with aggression, raw aggression, which is one aspect of black metal. But you know black metal, I'm sure, much better than I do even. And there is a lot of technical playfulness in certain black metal bands, and they really care about special forms and about chord progressions which are odd, which maybe within the death metal framework would not be so welcome, or would not even be considered as death metal anymore. So black metal has a certain openness towards crazy stuff, which is really odd, even like what Imperial Triumphant is doing. So it's really open. That's what I meant with inclusive too. Openness means also, or inclusion also means openness. Black metal doesn't have to be reduced to what many people associate with it, with what they know from the early 80s or early 90s with the second wave. There is much more in black metal, and I think that's the beauty of it. And it's great to see that within the last few years, many different kinds of styles have been or many different kinds of bands started to play with what means black metal, and that's
absolutely
really
yeah. And so I basically picked 5 black metal albums from my collection, okay, which I feel are some of my favorite albums. And you talked there about bands progressing, and I think this is a good example of one of these bands. So this is Enslaved, and the album's Frost.
Yes.
So this was very much a raw black metal album, but when you listen to their later stuff, it is very much progressive. And although they still use the black metal moniker, they're definitely expanding their sounds. And another good example, of course, is Imperial Triumphant, who use so many different jarring sounds to create what they're trying to put across the listener. And I love that. I'm all for bands experimenting and progressing. What was the first black metal band you can remember hearing? Was it like in the sort of Venom, Merciful Fate days, or was it the second wave Norway?
I think it was really second wave black metal, but then I jumped right back in history, right?
Sure.
Like Venom, and I was like, whoa, that's great, because it really pushed further into what I liked so much with Slayer, or even with Judas Priest, like Rob Halford's kind of singing really gave direction to what is the aesthetics of black metal voicings, and I thought that was really great. So, and I listened to everything. Like I'm an obsessive kind of person, so once I just listen through everything, I kind of absorb it, but I think maybe that's a bit a complicated thing as a musician. At some point you want to jump right in and do it yourself, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
So I listen to things, and then I'm like kind of pregnant in my brain, and then I want to start creating myself using that kind of language. And I've never been a person who was going into scenes a lot, hanging around. I don't have time for that. I like to be a bit for myself, and to read and to compose, and I remember I grew up in Switzerland, so black metal, not many people were listening
Hellhammer.
to black metal. Yes, but that was before me, you know. I was
Oh, sorry, before you moved, yeah, sorry.
yeah. I mean, Tom Warrior, he started with Hellhammer. My God, it was like early 80s, right? Mid 80s, something like this.
I
So I
wasn't born.
was so when I was listening to black metal, only a few people were listening to that. It was already something that has been passed, you know, kind of.
Yeah.
And just some fans were listening to it, and Switzerland has a great underground black metal scene, as far as I know. There are festivals, black metal festivals. Now, since 1 year, there's even an anarchistic black metal festival in Bern, which is really great.
Wow.
So there are many different kinds of black metal movements, but very underground, which I personally really love. And I think it's great that there is such a diversity within such a small country. I mean, Switzerland has as many inhabitants as New York City does.
That's crazy.
Drive across the country in 3 hours.
Really? Wow, that's insane.
So everything is really small, but there's still black. I don't know why, but Switzerland has a lot of extreme metal bands in all kinds of metal styles, and also black metal. And I think maybe it has to do with Hellhammer and Celtic Frost, because they started and they pushed so far. You know, they influenced so many bands and musicians far abroad from the borders of Switzerland, and maybe that's why. I don't know why, but yeah. But yet I was not really hanging out, because I was too young, I guess, when it could have been interesting. And later on, the scene was really smaller. I didn't really have the access, or my focus was in different places. And since I'm not really somebody who hangs around a lot in scenes, because I'm interested in too many different things, so it would be a bit of a tight schedule.
Yeah.
But yes, so I listened to everything next to other things, but my studies went into other directions. I didn't really, I would have, if somebody would have told me in my mid-20s that I would perform black metal one day, I would be, I mean, I would not be like, oh no, sure not. I would be like, okay, interesting. And it was because of Zachary that I did that, you know, like, when I was in New York meeting him, and he asked me to we were talking about bands we liked, and I knew Imperial Triumphant, of course, and then I knew Kenny, and then he was like, "Oh, would you want to do guest vocals?" And to from this point to what we did with Imperial Triumphant later on, and with Folterkammer. My God, I would have never expected this to happen, but it's so much fun, because everything that, as I described to you in the beginning, what I love so much about this style is something I really love to express as a musician, and to be creative with music, with the voice, and to do everything. That black metal is a great playground for that, you know, to do this, and to see that there are so many new bands from all over the world creating very interesting black metal music, to see, okay, it's growing, it's still growing, it's not something from the past, it's something that is very diverse and creative and very much alive, and people are pushing beyond the typical associations many people have with black metal, you know, due to incidents which can be definitely discussed, you know, in a critical way.
We will come on to discuss them. Your point there about, you know, someone saying, I could see you doing black metal, where the band that springs to mind bringing opera singing into black metal, the first one that springs to mind is Cradle of Filth. You know, like they I mean, there's an argument now whether they're still black metal, whether they've gone to, you know, mainstream, but certainly in the early days they were black metal, and I love Cradle of Filth. I love Sarah Jezebel. I think Sarah Jezebel was one of the vocalists, and a few more. But do you look at Cradle of Filth as sort of like a template as such, like when you're doing vocals, or is it very much like your own
Because I never really listened to them a lot when I was younger. It's something
Okay.
I discovered later on because I was performing it, and people were
Sure.
saying, "Hey, oh, this reminds me of this and that band." And then I was always intrigued to listen to this. Like, for
Yeah.
example, the Amanda Galas. I didn't really know her before until somebody started to compare my singing to what she was doing. So I checked her out and I was like, "Oh, wow, she's cool. Thank you so much for the compliment."
Yeah.
And Cradle of Filth was, I mean, as I said, I was into so many different kinds of music, so I didn't really have time for everything. But I checked it out later on, and I was really impressed by the vocal work and also how they create the song structures. That's really
Yes.
interesting what they are
Yes.
doing. Very good musicianship, very creative, and so I'm picking up this. But I'm somebody who I listen to many things, but in the end, I want to find my own tone. And of course, you hear what you know. So if you know Cradle of Filth, you will probably hear an association with it, or the Amanda Galas, or Nina Hagen, or whatever. Of course, I've listened to so many things. Something is there, and
Sure.
I don't have to reinvent the wheel when something is great. You can just ride on and do your own thing with it. So but an influence not in that way, because I'm influenced by classical music myself.
Yeah.
So whatever comes from that background. So
Yeah.
and also Nina Hagen. Nina Hagen is definitely an inspiration to me, definitely.
Yeah, no, and sorry as well. Like, I mean, the operatic singing in Cradle of Filth is certainly more backing. It's not, you front and center with Folterkammer. So, but it was, when I was thinking of it, I was like, this is something I've not heard before. Like, we have, like Nightwish with what's her name?
The current one.
Yeah,
Is it Simone? I'm really bad with names, but
you know who I mean. Anyway.
yeah, then it was somewhere. I don't remember
Oh,
names, but
begins with a T, does it? Anyway, like those operatic vocals, but I think the way you do it certainly has that great mix of everything involved, which makes it a lot more interesting, and you don't really know where it's going to go, which I think is a really good thing when I'm listening to black metal, because like you said, if you've got an album that's just pure blast beats and tremolo riffing for 60 minutes with shrieking vocals, it can get a bit samey. So people do have to stand out in the scene for sure.
as I said, I'm easily bored, and
Yeah.
that's why I don't only think about other people who listening to the music. I'm a very selfish person in this regard. I want to have fun myself.
Sure.
I want to create something that is fun.
I mean, you're going to be listening back to the tracks how many times over the recording process, and you want to be, enjoying it.
Yes, that's one side, but what is even like to me, what is more is the future thing, like being on stage and performing it on a regular basis. I mean that and so Zach Laurent and I, we all have a jazz background also. So we also have we love to improvise a little and to be a bit more ad lib, or in the with how we express ourselves. And I think Folterkammer has a certain tolerance to this. And so I can always change bits and pieces as I want, also with the singing, with the vocals, and that's good for the vocals, because how I sing is very extreme. It's very demanding and challenging for the voice, and you have to protect it. You have this instrument just once, and so to adapt towards the shape of the condition of the voice, it helps me a lot with interpreting. I always have to adapt myself a little, and since I on the album, the things I sang, it's within my comfort range, but still it's very demanding, and to have the voice in that shape for a tour every night, it's challenging, and sometimes it helps when you can have a bit of wiggle room, with these things. But also, as I said, for as a brain teaser, it's funny to always do something a little, to leave a bit unexpected things for accidents to happen. Hopefully the good ones.
On Vile Luxury and Alphaville, and were you on Ecstasy of Gold as well? Not Ecstasy of Gold.
Spirit of Ecstasy.
Thank you, that one.
Yes, I was on this one too.
Yeah. How many takes did it take you to get those vocals on record? And like your voice, like you were saying that you need to protect your voice, but it's so I can't even put a word on it. Like it's so vicious. Like, did it strain at all when you were doing it, or you're just used to it now?
So on Vile Luxury, when Zach called me, oh, you have to go to the studio. Now I was in Switzerland back then, and I had a very bad cold when I had to go to the studio.
Wow.
And so the whole performance there was actually just like a one take run thing, and we just took the bits and pieces we liked the most and sent it over to Imperial, and then they used it as they wanted it. And for Alphaville, I recorded the vocals in my New York apartment back then. Just
Wow.
it was really very spontaneous, and there is not there are. So I remember that Zach and I were talking about like I did a track, and he was like, oh, can you go towards more this kind of screams or something? And I remember I did that, but there were not so many takes. Like that was really natural. Also, I like the direct expression. I don't really like those pre-productions. I'm not a big pre-production fan. I love the expression of the moment, like when it's very direct and raw, even if it's refined. But if you make a take over and over again, it kind of loses the magic, the energy.
Sure.
And I think everything is about energy in music. And I prefer imperfection, but expression over perfection and not being expressive anymore. Like that, to me, that's death. And I don't want to be dead when I sing. I want to be alive, even if it means, oops, that could be something which could have been more refined, from a classical point of view. Yeah. But I don't care so much about that. There is something more important when it comes to musical or creating music. So everything with Imperial Triumphant is really crazy. And yes. Zach, Kenny, and Steve are exactly looking for this. And me as a singer, I love to do that. But that's exactly what I love to do the most. So I can go into that vicious character like this. Also from my voice type, even if I would sing traditional opera, I would be the vicious personalities, because my voice sound suggests this. We have different roles for different voice types in classical music on opera stages, and mine is the one of the Queen of the Night, that very high, vicious, high singing, vicious kind of lady, but also very dramatic, very strong. And Imperial gives me that opportunity. Folterkammer too. I can do whatever I want. I write my own melodies and lyrics. The only thing is it has to be in German. Zach loves German, so.
Right. It's a good job you can speak German, isn't it?
Yes, it's my mother tongue. You can hear it in the accent.
Your English is excellent, I must say. So thank you for speaking English, because my German is.
You can also try German or Swiss German if you want.
Do I know any German?
Or French?
I know a bit of Spanish.
Oh, I never had Spanish. Too bad.
Okay. Yeah. No. We'll just stick to English, shall we? It's easier.
Yeah, English. I love English.
Yes. But sorry, we talk about the black metal, the first wave, second wave. Then you've got the third wave in America with the likes of Leviathan and Zatha. And then we sort of like, it wasn't really such a fourth wave, it just sort of progressed. But amongst all this, bands like we talked about were progressing and trying different things. And I think, and I'm not just saying this because I'm talking to you, but Alphaville by Imperial Triumphant is certainly an album that has pushed all the boundaries and was,
I agree,
a phenomenal album, piece of art, black metal, whatever you want, but certainly significant impact on the scene when Alphaville was released.
Yeah. Also, what is it for me is I mean, it's an honor for me to have contributed to Imperial's work, because I've been a fan since a longer time.
Sure.
So I saw their progression with all the different musicians that came and went, and I saw how they developed their language step by step. And what I love the most about bands is when they push their own boundaries, when they always try to develop, to grow. It can mean that they lose some fans because they were really attached to an older phase of a band or a musician or whatever. But personally, I love to see growth, because I know what it means to do that as a musician, and that's what what I love to hear is how do people grow within music, as musicians, how, and even within a band, like how does a band sound now and how they sounded in the beginning of when they started. That's really interesting to see, because there are always many directions a band could take, and to see what has happened with Imperial Triumphant, also knowing Kenny's work from before, and Steve, who is actually a trained jazz piano player, not a bass. Yeah. To see how they are so creative and how they try to meld everything into this, I think that's really, really great. And Alphaville is huge. It really, that's to me, talking as a fan now.
Yeah.
It's an album that made like a mark, like a tattoo on the map that is black metal, because it really did something new, something that has not been heard before. And the surroundings always impacts the music you create, right? When the music you create when you grew up in London will be a different one than when you grew up in Switzerland.
Sure. Oh.
Or in New York, right? And how they incorporated or integrated this New York style, this history of music. That's brilliant. And I love to, as much as I love the second wave of black metal coming from north of Europe with that kind of, I mean, you can listen to jazz music from north of Europe. That's really different. It's amazing. That's so atmospheric. There is always something atmospheric to Northern European music. I don't know what it is. No matter what style, there is something so touching and moving with it, no matter if it's rebellious or romantic or whatever you want to, whatever you're looking for. But New York has this over the top whatever, but also this rawness. And then they just put their own stamp on this and say, that's New York black metal. And I was like, whoa. Okay.
I mean, like bringing in the Barbershop Quartet at the beginning of oh god, I can't remember the name of the track, but things like that which just come out of nowhere. And I think it was one of those albums that I think for the black metal purist it was divided, because they were like couldn't understand it. But I think they're just so progressive and really on point of what they want to do, which is great.
We could also be a bit philosophical, I think, because to me is what is metal? What is, and specifically what is black metal? To me, metal has always been rebellion, and black metal even more. It was even more raw rebellion. And how can we be purist about something that is anti-establishment? How can we establish something and be so purist about it? That's the opposite of the intention of that style of music, isn't it?
Yeah.
In my opinion, I think like, whoa, we don't need to gatekeep anything here. You
would think that, but this goes back to like Cradle of Filth. They started as an underground band and then went signed to Nuclear Blast or something like that, and everyone was like, they're not black metal anymore. They're not, they're not in the underground things. And you're like, well, you can't have it both ways. You're either one or the other. And like, I mean, let's take it back to like Mayhem, for example, right? The whole story of Mayhem was they were never going to play live because they didn't want to be famous, and now they're the biggest black metal band on the planet, arguably.
A huge brand, like
but I'm gonna come back to my top 5 albums, and we'd all talk about Enslaved, okay?
Okay.
I want to quickly just see if you know the band and what your thoughts are on it. And I personally, now this is where it's going to get a bit controversial, okay? I think this is personally the the biggest black metal album that's come out, and it's Mayhem's
Oh,
King
yes,
Serious
of
on
course.
Satan's.
Mm.
We just talked about it then. I mean, the story behind the making of the album, and the church burnings, the murders, they were like you said, they were a brand before they even released an album. They had fans before they released an album. What do you think about the Mayhem story? And I suppose my real question here is, can you separate the art from the artist when it comes to things like this? And that's a question that's been going around for years.
And honestly, I'm asking this question to myself over and over again
Yeah.
because of so many movies, so many books, so much musicians, so much great work, even within the frameworks of science, not just within the frameworks of art, has been done by people who could be discussed as,
Yep. Yep.
critical. I don't know if I find the right word in English.
Controversial.
Controversially, thank you.
Yeah.
And I must say, I have in general, I have a problem to support something that is totally against my view.
Yeah.
My and there were. I think what I can do is I listen to things without having an opinion. You know
Sure.
what I mean? Like, because
Yeah.
just I want to experience the music itself. But once I start to dig into the history of the band and I see like, yikes, okay, not cool. Then
Yeah.
I have a problem to really enjoy it as a fan.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I'm struggling with that, and honestly, I cannot even answer this question yet because I haven't decided yet. Because I'm asking this to myself too, and even in classical music, look at Wagner. Look at a composer like this. He was he to have that kind of thinking is really far away of how I think politically, and yet he did all this great music, and we still play it in opera houses all over the world or in orchestras. It could be discussed if we should still do that or not, knowing it's hard. But I think as a musician, first and foremost, I listen to the music before anything else.
Yeah.
And
I think when you
I see what Mayhem did during that time. I mean, it's really hard to put ourselves in the situation of what has been in the past because we were not there.
yeah.
Everything we do is a projection or an assumption based on our bias and how we live and what we and fantasies and gossips. We don't really know when we don't really know what it meant to grow up like they did. And what it meant to express themselves like this. But what I can do is to look into my own life and to see what influenced my decisions in music and what influenced how I write songs. And we have to think about how we were as teenagers. And as teenagers, you don't really know that much yet. You are really into your emotions and your hormones are driving you crazy and you want to change the whole world for the good and the bad. And so that was the spirit of these guys. They were so young and the music was their tool to really change something. And they did. They changed something and they even put a stamp on the history of music.
Yes.
And it took a lot of radical things to create it, which also has byproducts which were not that good, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Really not constructive. They created something which needs to be taken into consideration in what the music, how it developed and how it influenced bands and aesthetics also. And I can, as a musician, I can give credits to this. But as a musician, I also think we are we have a certain responsibility towards how we express ourselves, because people are listening to this. And personally, I believe a lot into making a difference between a shared reality and an expanded reality. And art for me is the expanded one, like religious, or for some people drugs, but we should not confuse that. The shared reality is should be a constructive, more neutral zone. Maybe it's a Swissness in me talking right now. But I think that whatever you do, it should be constructive. That's my approach, or that's how what I think when it comes to music. I know that we can easily be tempted to be very destructive, and even more as teenagers, when you just want to break things and stuff. And when you grow older, you learn, oh shit, that stuff has consequences. And
Yeah.
we have to, yes, when you are in public, you have to be considerate about this in a certain way. What is the consequence of what I'm doing? That's really, but when you are so young, you not sure. And should we blame people of folly, linked to being young and not that experienced yet, and not really, they did not knew that they will become so famous, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. I mean, like when you think about like Mayhem, when they recorded this album, they were what, teenage, like you said, teenagers. And when you're a teenager, your hormones are, you're at the raging, you want to rebel. Like, when we were younger, listening to Slayer and stuff was a rebel against our parents and stuff. But I mean, post the Mysterious Dom Satanas, mate, you didn't hear anything of Mayhem in terms of any controversies. It was just that starting point. And I think, like you said, people grow up. Now, obviously, there was the murders in there, which of course are horrific. I think we can all agree when it comes to like bands having certain ideologies, we don't condone at all. But it is a difficult one, and I think you answered it very well. That you're not sure yet, but maybe, you know, when we're older, we might be able to do that. But I think it's one of those real touchy questions in metal, and especially in this day and age where so many, not just in metal either, but in general music or film, a lot more of these cases of sexual assault are becoming more apparent, and people are speaking up about it, and it makes it very, very difficult to enjoy an artist who you previously loved. Do you know?
I think everything is a learning process also. And when you do something for the first time, it's clear you will make a lot of mistakes. That's part of the process. I think murder is one step too much over the edge. You know what I mean? Like, that's, sorry, but that's a no-go. Seriously, that's a crime. And that's it. And to have, for example, as you mentioned, sexual violence against people, that's a no-go neither. And there should not be any tolerance for this whatsoever. And yet we have the past. Things have happened and have been created and certain things have happened during those creations. I think if a mistake happens once, it's a mistake. If you do it over and over again, it's a decision. And if you as a musician, after Mayhem and all these bands, if you want to create black metal or whatever, doesn't matter what kind of style, don't do the same mistakes. Because then it would be a decision to do it. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I'm sure those guys, as I said, I cannot think instead of them. I don't know what they were thinking, or if they were thinking at all, probably not. So, like, I don't know. And I'm not a judge neither. I that's not my job. I'm a musician, but I that's why I told you, for me, it was really, I'm actually happy. I'm 40 years old. So I'm not 17 anymore. I had time to grow into the musician I am right now,
Yeah.
and to make choices. I mean, what I do with Folterkammer is extremely provocative too.
Of course. But
But
it's not harming anyone.
but yes, it's not. I don't harm people. I don't kill people.
The lyrics are not provocative to like Cannibal Corpse, Hammer Smash Face, or things like that. You know,
They are provocative, but it's
not in
the first album, Die Lederpredigt. The lyrics were really evil, you know, but. I'm not a Satanist, so I don't think
sure.
about that, and I can make a difference between the art I put on stage and who I am as a private person. That's not the same, you know.
Yeah.
Art is much bigger than me. I'm just a servant to something that needs
Convey
I
the
need
art.
to
Yeah.
create it, and but I will not put my lyrics into action. You know what I mean? That belongs
Yes.
on
Yeah.
stage. When you are an author and you write a crime story, like for example Sherlock Holmes, you're not you are not a killer yourself just because you describe this or you make a story about it. It's the same with songs. We cannot jump to conclusions. Art is art, and it should should remain sacred as what it is, you know. Not I don't mean you should not touch it and criticize it. I think that's really important for the
Yes.
process parts, but it's a sphere on its own. But if you start to confuse these things and you think because you have that thing going on in your arts, it gives you the power to kill somebody. Sorry, but no, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So, and all the generations now, all the new bands, artists, and even those from that time who were, you know, parallel to what was happening then, we should learn from that. And I think we did also. We have to continue. And I think even a band like Mayhem did, because they changed, you know, and they
Yes.
still exist. So that must have been a huge process also psychologically to deal with that, you know. So we can be stuck in the past with the mistakes that happen, or we move on, we learn from the mistakes, and we give everything we can do to make it better. And I think that's what we need to go for, because we all make mistakes, you know.
Yes.
We all, but if we learn from them and continue, I think that's the beauty of being alive and of growth. And to me, honestly, I think it's great that a band like Mayhem showed they can go past this, you know.
Yeah.
And still continue. There you will always find people who find something, they project something romantic also to that really destructive stuff that happened. I don't think like that. I think we should not support or tolerate this, you know. But yes, there are people who romanticize these things too, you know. That's as a part of provocation, or they really mean it, I don't know. But
It's
that's not the
fantastic
black metal
answer.
I want, or the spirit of black metal I want to cultivate. What I want to
Sure.
cultivate is the aspect of creativity and inclusion that I love about black metal, and about these extreme things and raw things and the darkness of it too. I think it's great, but we don't have to go and slaughter a goat and
Well,
to kill people.
it's funny you should mention that, Andromeda, because the next album I have is by Gorgoroth.
Gorgoroth, okay.
Exhibit Satan. This cost me about €70 to buy this album on record. It's one of my favorites, but of course the infamous Gorgoroth concert in Krakow, where they had was it pigs' heads on stakes, and they had
in the smell.
two naked women and two naked men on crucifixes, and they got sent to court and things like that. You know, you're talking about art there, and the darkness. You know, at the same time, did they go too far? Perhaps. I think if you're talking like vegans or vegetarians would say, you know, putting that on heads on stakes is too far. I think if you talk to meat eaters or just diehard metal fans would say, yeah, this is proper black metal. But I mean, this is the art against, comparison to someone else, isn't it? Like,
I think that's up to somebody's taste.
sure,
I mean, as a vegan or vegetarian, you probably don't want to support this. I understand this, but there is no dogma about being vegetarian or vegan. You know what I mean? It's not a dictatorship. There is not a law that says because there are people who eat meat, and yes, animals get killed for that. That's true. And yes, if a black metal band promotes spreading pig blood all over the place, okay, that's part of this whole thing. As we, if we accept this, we also need to accept that.
yes,
And I mean, it would be, I guess, a different thing if people would be killed on stage because that's forbidden. You know what I mean? Like
of course,
so everything in everything we do as humans, I think it's a negotiation and a re-evaluation of our norms and values, and they change over time. What has been tolerated 100 years ago is a no-go right now. And
yeah,
I think who knows, maybe in 100 years it will be forbidden to use pig blood on stage, you know,
I'd
because
say that's
the
probably a
norms and
lot
the
sooner.
values change, or maybe even the resources changed. You don't know that. We simply don't know yet. But if really people, if we as a society would agree at some point, so eating meat is not allowed anymore because of whatever reason,
Yep.
then this would also not be acceptable anymore. So but there is still wiggle room, and this band used this one for their provocation. But well, that even in opera, there were like there are bloody installations and naked people and stuff. And to me, that's art. That's
Yeah.
part of the stage. As long as it's within the framework of laws, that is okay. Well, it's I don't want to be at the concert when I smell the pig blood. I would vomit because
Yeah, I
I
think
find
I'd
it
do the
rather
same.
disgusting.
I think I'd do the same. As much as I
That's
love black metal.
Everybody has a different taste, and that's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, also with topics, yeah, everybody should decide for him or herself in the end. I
Yeah.
don't want to be judged.
We've 2 albums left, okay? So
Okay.
this one, in fact, all of these have been Norwegian. The next one is Dodheimsgard,
Oh, I don't know this one.
and the album 666 International. And
Okay.
this is an industrial black metal album
Oh,
from Norway.
interesting.
And
Mhm.
if you've not listened to it, Andromeda, I would highly recommend it. It is,
Yeah.
like we said with Alphaville, them sort of like pushing the
Mhm.
boundaries. This is one of those albums where, a bit like Thorns, I don't know if you've heard of them either, really sort of took the scene by surprise almost. And they just released their last album last year, which again is not totally black metal, but there are elements of it in there. So yeah, Dodheimsgard is another one I'd highly recommend to have a listen to, and I'd be
Okay.
interested to hear your thoughts on it as well. And my final album before we leave and finish up is, you'll know the band, but whether the album it's Dark Throne, and the album's
Oh,
Pantheon.
yes. I know it.
And I think, I mean, look, the back true Norwegian black metal is, that's what it's about. I think arguably Dark Throne and Mayhem, probably the two pioneers of the scene, certainly the second wave. I mean, they've released God knows how many albums now. They've gone from black metal to punk
Yeah.
crust to
Yeah.
just straight up heavy metal. But I mean,
They tried different things. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. And I don't know. Did you discover Dark Throne as well, like as an early
Of
age?
course, I listened to them. Yes, of course. And I mean, they were very influential on the style. I listened to so many bands. It's what I said. It's like what the question we discussed. Can we listen to bands, and can we make a difference between the art and the artist?
Yeah,
And I've listened to so many bands, not just in black metal. There you could even listen to hip hop music. There's so much homophobia and sexism in some tunes, even in reggae music and stuff. So I listen to so much music. If I would be sorting it all out, very much into all these principles and zero tolerance, that I cannot deny what I've heard already, you know what I mean? And also like Wagner too, for example, as I said, as an example. So you listen to things, you learn from that as a musician, and you see the history of things, how they developed. And I think that Mayhem and Dark Throne, they are who they are, and they created something, and they started a path that I, with black metal, continued to walk, but I took a different turn. And there is no reason to deny their existence and their creations, even with like Mayhem, or I think there's no use for that. But the difference how we deal with things. I remember this discussion during COVID when there were statues being attacked. You remember this time?
Yes.
Statue, and yes, of course, because when you put a statue in public spaces with characters who were, from his historical point of view, really controversial, if that's the word you used, or even hurtful, like really harming to some people. If you put them in public spaces, it's about glorification. But if you put that statue within the framework of a museum, it's for education. That's a big and an important one. And I think with music, maybe we should do it in a similar way, like to make this difference between what is it there we could glorify. Is it really that important to glorify somebody? I mean, all humans have mistakes and failures. Or do we learn from it? What I discussed before, and with black metal, there were some people in this scene who are very controversial, and they did really bad mistakes sometimes. And so I'm not their judge. They had to live their things. Some of them are not alive anymore. But we can learn from this, and we should learn from this. But we can also learn from the music, and we can see what they did as a musician, and we're working with that style, and do something different with it, and to learn from it, and to grow it into another direction. Maybe it was not the direction they hoped would happen. But they don't have that peer pressure on us, you know.
Yeah.
Censorship. So time changes things, and I think there is no use in denying things or covering them up. I prefer to face things, even controversial things, and to make something constructive out of it. That's what I think. Yeah. But yes, I mean, come on, the music is great.
Yes.
It's just that's what it is. And so many controversial people created amazing arts and amazing music, and
it will live on. It will live on.
And I think it must. I think what is important is to change the path, you know. So the past is the past. We cannot change this. But the future we can change right now. And what I saw during the last years made me come back into black metal, because as you asked me when I started to listen to black metal. So I listened to that in around my 20s, early 20s. Was really into it, but then I went away because I read all these stories all of a sudden, you know, like what? Oh, and also to see that so many people with very right-wing political point of views were into this, and I was like, no way, that's not me. But then I remember all of a sudden there was this band called, I think, Liturgy.
Liturgy. Oh,
that's how you pronounce it. And I was like, whoa, what's this? That's new. That's cool. And then Imperial Triumphant. And I was like, wow, the new bands are popping up, and they're so interesting, and they really change things. They change the paradigm, and wow, okay. And that's why I got back into it, to see that there is so much more diversity going on, and I think that's needed, because black metal is, well, as I said, it's so open. There are so many possibilities to meet as musicians and to express yourself within this playground or framework, as you want to call it. And we should really use this opportunity and not just be stuck in the past. I think we have to push it further, because what these people tried to do back then, artists in the 80s, no matter what kind of style of music it was, they tried to change something. They tried to change a dogma, a very rigid system. So we should not establish a rigid system of something that was meant to break these things.
Yeah.
That's how I see things. And black metal is one of the, in my opinion, one of the greatest tools for that from a musical point of view, because there is still so much that can happen with black metal. Some took a symphonic turn, some took a jazz turn like Imperial, and so forth and so forth. There could be still so many other things happen with black metal, and I'm very curious what kind of music will be produced and created, and that, to me, there is, I wonder if there is another style of metal that allows so much opportunity in regards of creativity.
Yeah, I mean, we will see for sure.
Yes, we will see.
I mean, maybe the next Folterkammer album might, add some hip hop into it or something like that.
Or yodels. I'm from Switzerland.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yes. There you go. You got it.
Oh boy! I don't even know how to yodel.
First take done. Put it in the album. Send it on to the band. Andromeda, this has been a fascinating chat, and it's been great talking to you about black metal. I mean, we only touched on your band Folterkammer a few times, but it's been great just chatting to you about, your growing up with black metal and your feelings on it. And I hope at some point in the future I get to see you guys on tour somewhere.
Oh, I would love to.
It would be fantastic. I know Imperial Triumphant are playing in the UK soon, so I'll be catching them.
They are heading to Europe, right?
Chat to Steve and Zach again. They're lovely guys. But listen, let's do this again sometime in the future.
Yes,
it would be lovely. I can only thank you enough for joining me.
Thank you.
And enjoy the rest of your evening.
Yes, thank you. You too. Bye.
Keep the hair like that.
It changes all the time.
Good night.